name is Dennis Sperling. If you've been involved in an accident, call me and I'll fight for you. I'm not an actor or a celebrity spokesperson. I'm a real trial lawyer, and I'll appear before real judges and real juries on behalf of people with serious injuries. So when I say I'll fight for you, I mean it, and I'll back it up. If you've been hurt in an automobile or 18-wheeler accident, contact me toll free at 866-529-2444, and I'll fight for your rights.
This is a good dude, y'all. Coming in story, man, big time lawyer out here in Texas, man. He not tell a story, and y'all need to do the same.
Well, my books, I started writing these books in 2011, and they're called
yeah, there we go.
Rules to Live By, How to Maintain Peace of Mind and Happiness in a Conflicted World. And you can get them on Amazon, and you can download them directly off Amazon and Kindle. Just look up Dennis Sperling, which is my name, Dennis Sperling, and type in Amazon. They'll come right up. If you want a hard copy, you can email me at sperlingdennis@gmail.com. If you want a copy of the books, and I'm telling you, I give you a lot of different scenarios. There's some child support stuff in here, but it's mostly a lot of different areas which I've had to deal with in my personal life. Those of you guys who have sons who have you just met, or sons who are separated from you, if you one of those young men, and I call myself the lost son, and I actually wrote a lot of music, man. Come to find out, man, I'm related to B.B. King through my grandmother. It was her cousin, like my cousin. So
he from Mississippi too.
Yeah. Her name was Elmira King. He was B.B. King. They were cousins, and they all lived out in that area, And so come to find out, man, music is in my blood. So I end up doing 7 albums with Beans and Cornbread. They produced Slim Thug, Paul Wall. Okay. I actually have a track with Paul Wall from back in the day. It's called Grown Man Stuff. But, that's not something I want to go into. But bottom line is that creativity allows me to be who I am. But the books, you can find them on Amazon. You can do the Kindle thing. They're very interesting. They're a wonderful read. You can probably read them in 2 or 3 days, but they're great for young men who have grown up, who haven't had their fathers. It basically deals with everything that we as Black American men have had to deal with in the past 40 years.
Across me, man. I was like, man, I was checking you out. I'm like, damn, this man a real deal. So yeah, definitely, man. We all got to reach back. You know what I'm saying? And we right now, like with Kev, we got Donovan, we got all these different brothers put in a network. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's using their talents to help each other get to the next level. Definitely love to bring you into the fold.
Definitely. You guys are amazing. All you guys, I just love to hear my Black brothers speaking their mind. I just want to hear you all say what it is that you want to say and speak on your behalf, because I know you're a little bit younger than I am, man, but hell, since the 1980s, all I've been hearing is Black men get bashed. They ain't this, they ain't that. We've had nobody to speak up on our behalf, so we've been told just shut up and take it, be the strong, silent type. It's not manly for you to speak up. How dare you argue with these women, blah, blah, blah. Even if what they're saying is outright lies and what we know not to be true. Even in our religious, whether it's the church or the Black Muslims or any of these type of folks, it's always seemed like they rather bash the men as opposed to hold the ladies accountable. And that's unfortunate, because you've created this one-sided war, and you have one side that has no accountability for what they've done,
And then now what? Look at where we are as a culture.
Actually, Brother DeBell 5000 got a question. Is there any way for family court laws to change if men and real women push to change it? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the fact that you have more women being forced to pay child support and alimony is probably the only thing that's going to make them say we need to change these laws. Because as long as it was one-sided and it was men paying women for the past, I don't know how many years, at least since a lot of years, then there was no incentive for women to even want to change anything because that's their fallback plan. I mean, marry a rich guy, have some kids, I divorce them, I'm good. But right. But now that women are being forced to have to ante up, I think there is some incentive for it to change. And here's another thing: a lot of those ladies who have sons who they've seen been manhandled by the child support system, they should become advocates for family law reform. I think one thing we should do is we should begin to do away with child support altogether.
Like they use Black men as a catalyst to get more funding for themselves to go in a different direction. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter as an organization?
I am not happy with Black Lives Matter as an organization. In fact, I'm absolutely disgusted by Black Lives Matter as an organization. These vultures, what they do is whenever a Black man is shot by a white cop or a white race soldier or one of these white suburban commandos, they come in to protest, and they only come in to protest if those Black men's lives fit a certain narrative. So Black Lives Matter is a very disingenuous organization. It talks about marching and protesting, but if we look at who they're marching and protesting for, oftentimes it is, again, Black men who are Pookies and Ray Rays who are shot and killed by a white police officer, a race soldier, or one of these white suburban commandos. They go out here, they kick up a fuss with this protesting, and they really are not anything about Black men or Black men's issues. Because when I look at Black Lives Matter, they don't talk about Black men's issues.
Dramatization.
After a car wreck, you may have to fight with a highly trained insurance company rep whose job is to knock your damaged claim down and out. It's a bad idea to enter the ring alone against a trained boxer, and it could be a bad idea to fight against a big insurance company by yourself. When the bell rings, attorney Dennis Sperling will be there to fight for your rights. If you've been seriously injured in a car wreck, call me, attorney Dennis Sperling, at 866-529-2444. That's 866-529-2444. Hey, what's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App, make sure you contribute to the PayPal, make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions that keep this thing going. Thanks.
Attorney, reality show creator, and rapper Dennis Sperling. Also joining us is Sperling's good
friends, Vondrick Christmas and Dion Dorsett. Welcome to the Fact Uncensored.
What's up, Isaiah?
Now, here's the thing. I've been reading your Facebook posts for years.
Okay.
And this is what you've been espousing. You're saying, I need to leave this country to find a good woman.
Yeah. Okay. See, first of all,
no backtracking
really like
now.
The way you
No
brought us in here
backtracking.
like that, man. We don't need to smoke, man. We don't need that type of smoke. Okay. What happened was I got divorced, and I looked around and I said, you know, I want to change, you know, and I never really traveled. I went to school. These guys went to school with me, and they know all we did was study. And so I got married. That didn't work out. I got divorced. And then I said, well, you know what? Let me get a passport and see what that's like. So I started traveling overseas. I went to the Dominican Republic, Jamaica, all over London, Europe, things that I had never done before. And I liked it. And I liked what I saw. And I enjoyed myself. And when I did decide to date, I got treated like a king. So I go where I'm celebrated. You know, and that's
So,
basically it.
You're not celebrated here in the United States like you want to be.
Okay, see what had happened was I got divorced, you know, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys. My Facebook posts are real, but really they're the feelings that a lot of African American men and men in general feel. They say, look, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I work all my life. I do everything I can to please my wife, and then she divorces me. 70% of marriages are brought to divorce by the women in those relationships. So clearly people aren't happy. Look at the marriage rate. Look at the depression rate that we have. I think people need to get out a little bit more. But more importantly, you know, it's something that I like. These guys, I know that they don't feel the same way I do because my Facebook page has a diverse group of guys with different ideas. And so this is just what works for me, you know?
And so what works for you guys?
So I would say that
and then it depends on what type of
And
man
is
you are.
anything wrong with that?
Nothing.
Requiring more?
No, it's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just, you know, those expectations seem for some guys maybe a little bit much.
I argue all day, and I don't have time to come home and argue.
And so that's what you get with
I don't
you perceive to be an American woman.
I think that American women, they have so much pressure on them that it's nearly impossible for them to fulfill those traditional roles that women have fulfilled all the way up until the 50s when industrialization and it's impossible for them to do that. So the culture and what we have going on here in the United States makes it impossible to have one of those traditional relationships. Whereas in Colombia or the Dominican Republic or Haiti, the women, they still have that culture that says, hey, I'm cooking and cleaning for my man, but hey, there's some responsibilities on the men too, because those women, they still want men that take care of business, that go to work, that pay bills. So you have a role you have to fill, and she has a role she has to fill. So it's not like I'm just going down there sitting up on the sofa and she's making mango every day, feeding me like I'm a king.
Is you never get flack from, I hate to say it, man, but you're a successful brother.
Yeah.
And I'm a successful man. I don't get flack from my peers. I don't get flack from guys that are up here doing the things we're doing. Regardless of where the comma is, you tend to get flack from guys who are not where they want to be.
Right.
And it's like, look, man. And here's one thing that's unique about the Black community. We got the barbershop experience, and that takes anywhere from the homeless dude to the D-boy to the corporate exec. We all go to the same spot. And that's one thing that's unique about us is the socioeconomic groups we mix. And we all look at each other as men, and I'm like, no, there's white men, non-black men have long been able to do all these things, but when black men just do what's normal and natural, we're muted. And that's what brothers are finally starting to push back and fight against, because that's crazy to think that you shouldn't have a younger woman, especially if you can pay the cost to be the boss and provide. That's the ideal situation.
It is.
Ideal situation, because she never has to go outside and work and get outside of her femininity.
It seems to me, for those who say this is bad for the black community, it would seem to me that the perfect pairing is a mature older man with resources who's proven himself, and a younger fertile woman who can come together and reproduce children in a safe family environment. I believe in marriage. I don't like the family laws that are set up there, but I do believe in marriage. I think men are better in marriage when they have loving women who care for them, who are reciprocate, who are feminine, and who are there to help them be the best men they can be. I believe in marriage. I just don't like the way the system is set up. Now, there are some things you can do to mitigate that: prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, have an understanding, put some money in a trust account. So you can eliminate the financial incentive in getting a divorce, and there you are. Now you got a person in front of you. But
I'm glad that we actually got a high value man. Shout out to Kevin Samuels. I'm not sure if you've been following the high value movement, but you know what I'm saying, you definitely would fit that description. I mean, a lawyer, you know what I'm saying, you went about it the right way. You're married. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out, but you got to do what you got to do. Yeah. And what you have to do is co-parent. And we hear the women all the time tell us stories about how I'm such a good, we co-parent good. It's always the women talking about it. You know what I'm saying? But you as a black man, high value black man, it's very important that you get a perspective and give the brothers the right advice as far as co-parenting. And it seems like that's been the bulk of your work, you know what I'm saying, outside of the law. You know, you've been really pushing for co-parenting and just showing the dynamics of it and how it should work and how it can work in harmony. Because again, you don't have no ill will against your wife. You know what I'm saying?
I'm not saying it on your show.
You know what I'm saying? So you ain't cooking her. So I mean, it seems like everything, you know, you got everything copacetic. So talk to the brothers who may be going through a divorce.
Well,
who may be in a situation where, look, man, I had a kid with this woman and I got all these things going, but I'm trying to make sure I keep harmony for the sake of the kids, because that's who it's about.
Well, let me say this, brother. I got divorced for a reason. Okay. And I, in the wake of that divorce, 5 years thereafter, I got myself what's called a baby mama. I don't know if you've heard of that, but life got real.
I've heard of that. Have we heard of that, church?
Yeah, it got complicated after that happened because the children were born under two separate circumstances. So I can pull from both of these, you know, to kind of explain, you know, what happened. Now, I would suggest that you never get a baby mama if you can avoid one, but it happened to me. But basically what I'm I think my point is you can't co-parent with everyone, period. If you weren't married to that woman, if you were married to a woman, hopefully you guys came to an accord at some point and you can use that as a foundation to begin to co-parent and do what's in the best interest of the child. Now, if you had one night where you turned up at the club and you just randomly met some woman and you have nothing in common with her and you don't know much about her and you guys have two different set of principles and understanding about how life should be and how children should raise, it's going to be very difficult for you to co-parent with that person. So
is that the case with the baby mama?
Probably so.
Hi, my name is Dennis Berlin. I'm not a lawyer, but my daddy is. Yeah. If you've been hurt in a car accident, call my daddy. No need to scream and yell like a little kid. Yeah. My daddy will fight for your rights. Yeah, fight for your rights. If you've been involved in a car accident, call my daddy, Attorney Dennis Berlin.
Hello, I'm Attorney Dennis Berlin. If you've been injured in a car wreck, call me. 713-229-0770.
Call my daddy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? If you appreciate the format and you appreciate what we're doing here, then make sure you contribute to the Cash App. Make sure you contribute to the PayPal. Make sure you donate to the Super Chat. It's only you and your contributions that keep this thing going. Thanks. Understanding about life. I know what it is to be with a woman and how you have to treat a woman and how you have to pick and select a woman. And you do a great job at explaining to these young men what they don't want and what they should be looking after. I didn't have somebody like you when I was a young man. You see,
yeah. Do you believe in marriage, and
yes,
would you get married again?
I would definitely get married again. It would definitely be a different kind of woman. It would definitely be a woman not from the toxic culture that I was raised in. Okay. And so it's not a race thing, it's a culture thing. Okay. Let me say that again for the people in the back. It's not a race thing, it's a culture thing. I typically have only dated Black women, Black American women. I tried to date the Jamaican lady who ended up being my child's mother, but she was Black American in her culture because she was raised in the United States. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't good women out there, but what I'm saying is you're looking at a toxic culture that does not put the family first. They put the me first. They put the get the bag first. And so it's impossible to have a union with somebody like that. And we got a lot of stuff going on politically. And the question that I presented today for the brothers here is, this is my statement, just because Trump has been voted out doesn't mean that the show is over. 70 million fervent followers voted for him in 2020, despite knowing all of his shortcomings. Trump is a symptom. He is a reflection of how nearly 1/2 of Americans feel. How does this affect Black men? Let's talk about it. And as the opening statement, it was 2021 and beyond, 70 million Trump voters aren't going anywhere. Look, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that 5 people have been shot and killed in Washington, D.C. as of now, related to the protest outside the Capitol building. One of them is this gentleman, Benjamin Phillips. He basically runs a Trump website, pro-Trump website called Trumparoo, where patriots can mobilize against the corrupt, communist, Marxist, scummy Democrats. Here's another one. We just learned avid Trump supporter Kevin Greeson, who regularly posted online about getting his guns and taking the country back, was one of the 4 people who died in the siege. It was 5 people who died in the siege of the Capitol. Post from Greeson wishing bad things to happen to Nancy Pelosi and identifying with the Proud Boys were found as well. So here's what I'm saying, fellas. You know, these guys, these people are not going anywhere. And just explain to them generally.
Well, the context of that video was me making a commentary on how people are not really looking objectively at your Donald Trump. And because they're not looking at him objectively, they are approaching him from the position, as I see it, of obsession. Because when I look at the way the Congress has been acting, I look at the way the Senate has been acting, I look at the way people on the street have been acting, and it's like they're not thinking critically or objectively about anything Donald Trump is about. They're coming at it from this position of this extreme emotion. And because they're coming from this extreme emotion, they only think from this perspective of obsessively about Donald Trump. It's all about either you're extremely for Trump or you're extremely against Trump. And these people who are obsessed with Donald Trump, they aren't really thinking about the harm they're doing to the American people.
I will scream and I will holler. Then I'll scream and holler some more, saying absolutely nothing.
You have a choice in legal representation. And in making that choice, do you want an attorney with a made-for-TV nickname to represent you in your serious car wreck claim?
I will growl, kick, and scream.
My name is Dennis Sperling. If you've been involved in a motor vehicle accident, contact me toll-free at 866-529-2444. The choice is yours. What's up, you guys? This is Dennis Sperling, and I'm back today to have a conversation with you all about a very interesting topic. It's just an observation of mine, and it is the similarities between Mr. Dave Chappell, famous comedian, and our very own Mr. Kevin Samuels. I find it interesting that as much as people have tried to cancel both of these gentlemen, even so far as having a petition drawn up to try to cancel Kevin Samuels, they were unable to do it. Same goes for Dave Chappelle. As you see, the fight continues forward. They're doing their very best to cancel Dave Chappelle. They've tried to get Netflix to remove the program, stand-up comedy classic, The Closer, which apparently is the fourth of 4 that he was contracted with Netflix to provide. Now, what I want to do is provide an analysis because, see, at the end of the day, these are still 2 black men. These are black men. They are intelligent, well-spoken. They're heterosexual. They have children. They're prime candidates for attack by the system.
that typically takes black men and cuts them up whenever they make a mistake or get out of line. And so what we have to do as thinking black men is analyze this and try to figure out what is it that Mr. Kevin Samuels has done and Mr. Dave Chappelle have done. What is it that they've done to position themselves so that they are not, Hollywood can't cancel them. So here's the thing. We want to just go through an analysis of that. But before we get started, I want to make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button. Also, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I want to hear what you guys have to say on this. So feel free to comment. This section is open to everybody who wants to comment. So go ahead and comment. I want to hear what you guys have to say. But I'm going to go ahead and prepare with my notes so we can go ahead and get this conversation going. Kevin Samuels and Dave Chappelle have a lot in common. They both were brave enough to speak truth when others were afraid, and they did so in an eloquent and dignified manner so that people would listen, and they reaped the reward from their courage and class. See, Dave Chappelle isn't the first comic to address these touchy topics that have been deemed off limits by protected groups. There's no other entertainer aside from Dave Chappelle that can use the phrase "space Jews" and talk about how hypocritical the LGBT community is as it pertains to race issues, and not immediately be blackballed from Hollywood, especially in this woke climate. Likewise, Manosphere content creator extraordinary, well, let me say it like this. Manosphere content creators on YouTube, there are those that predate Kevin Samuels who have addressed the shortfalls of Black American women and the Black American dating game. But most of them were canceled before they even emerged into the mainstream. Moreover, and although they may be well known and they may be popular, they'll never reap the full benefit of their knowledge because they were easy targets to woke culture and the hit squad, and for the hit squad to take out. Many have delivered the same messages very similarly to Kevin Samuels, but they did it in a very vulgar and intrusive and degrading way. So the message, as truthful as it may be, is lost. See, even after the content is toned down, let's say they change over time, the reputation of who they are and what they did remains, and the damage is done. So they can never rise past that. Kevin Samuels, like Dave Chappelle, on the other hand, both proved to be hard targets. Why? Because, as I said before, they were eloquent in their delivery. They were respectful, even not to the point where they compromised their integrity or the poignancy of what they were saying, but they delivered it in a different manner. Here's another thing. Those who've tried to cancel them have received backlash and have become themselves canceled or nearly canceled. So the question is, how is it that these two middle-aged Black men, right, how have they done what many of us thought was impossible? And we want to take the time to analyze the methodology and figure out how we can replicate that. So if you guys appreciate what I'm doing, hit the number 1 button. That's my opening intro. Make sure you can hear me. Check in. Let me know where you're checking in from. Hit the number 1 button. Let me know where you guys are checking in from. I'd like to know that. In addition to that, let's just go ahead and let me see here. Any comments? Any of my members? Big shout out to John Thomas. Thank you so much. Hit the number 1 button if you guys can hear me clearly. Make sure you get the likes up, fellas. So let's go ahead and start. So Dave Chappelle. You guys have saw the special right now. I'm sure many of you guys have heard Kevin Samuels over and over again. So it's no need for me to explain to you all who these gentlemen are. You know who they are. They're darn near household names in the Black community. And for the most part, I know the vast majority of those who follow me are Black men especially. So I want to go through Dave Chappelle's, what I call his trap, right? What do I mean by that? Well, Dave Chappelle's a brilliant man. He's a brilliant entertainer. He knows how to sway a crowd. He's been at this for 30 years. I'm sorry, it's been 30 years he's been at this. And so what I recognize in his monologue is that he laid a trap for the LGBT community. He did it by telling the story of his friend, right? What did he say? He basically said, I befriended this person. She was a trans person. She was a trans woman, which means she's a biological man living as a woman. There's no indication as to whether or not she underwent the sex change. But for the purpose of this conversation, she's a trans woman. And he explained how when they first met, it was a bar and they were cool, and she laughed at all his jokes, and she was really supportive of him. And he basically humanized her to the point that it made folks like myself say, wow, he granted her back her humanity. You know, even at the end of it, when he said, hey, I'm just going through some human stuff. In other words, why are you living like that? I'm just doing some human stuff. I'm going through something human. He humanized. He granted her humanity. And even with people like me who are starched, I'm probably more conservative than most of you guys. I'm definitely a traditionalist. I don't support gay marriage, even though it's legal in the United States. I don't support it for both religious reasons and societal reasons. I definitely don't support it for the Black community. If he can convince somebody like it, and I think that the Supreme Court was an error when they ruled in favor of gay marriage. So I don't even support the law. I think that's a misinterpretation. Nevertheless, even with somebody like me, it touched me to hear the story of Dave Chappelle and his friend. He humanized this person. He humanized this woman. And the fact that I'm even willing to call her a woman, even though I know this is a biological male, tells you that, you know what, she's going through something human. I'll entertain it. Even though I don't believe it, just let's not crush this person any further. The fact that he's able to humanize this person to the point where I feel compassion for this man who dresses like a woman. And I say that for a reason, because I want you to understand that this is where I'm coming from. You know, that says a lot. And because I'm a hard audience to convince. A seasoned, trial lawyer, 2 decades in, I've seen it, I've heard it all. The fact that he's able to convince me with words that this person is a human being and just going through something lets me know that Dave Chappelle is probably the biggest ally that the trans community had ever had. Now, here's the thing. Here's a trap. Because he humanized her, right? And then he explained how his friend, being a good friend who he allowed open the show for him, then stood up for him in his last special. And then 6 days later, after she was berated by her tribe, she decided to delete herself by jumping off of a building. Makes me think that these people on Twitter who berated her are to blame for this self-deletion. That's what he did. So he already positioned himself as a person who is helping a friend that he's humanized to us. And it makes these people on Twitter, they're the ones to blame for her self-deletion, where she jumped off a building. And he said it and even was able to get some humor. I say, my friend would say, the fact that she jumped off, only a man would do that. It's like, wow, that's humorous, but it's so tragic. It's tragic. It's humorous and tragic. It's Shakespearean in the way it played out. And what does it do to the audience? It makes us say, you know what? We have to protect the weak from these aggressive killers on Twitter.
Mind you, the people that we're protecting her from and people like her from are going to be the other members of the LGBT community who are radical, who can't take a joke to the point that they're willing to destroy their own. This is what he did. This is the trap that he laid for the LGBT community, and I think it's brilliant. Now, we're allowed to say F Twitter because Twitter's a bully, and number two, because it doesn't exist. Remember when he said that? It was a brilliant move. That's the first thing I noticed about Dave. Dave anticipate this coming. He just basically empowered the public to protect not only ourselves, but say, hey, look what you all done. He stole the moral high ground from them. You all kill your own. You're savages. You're cannibals. You kill your own for this agenda. What does that say about you? And the fact that he was able to humanize his friend for us and make her allow for us to relate to her on a human level is a beautiful thing. Now, whether you support trans, LGBT community or not, the one thing that is undisputed is that these are human beings going through something human. I'm having a human moment, I believe, is what he said, something like that. And it's a beautiful thing. But again, like I said before, we are able to say F Twitter. We're able to say F Twitter. Why? Because they're bullies. They bullied Dave Chappelle's friend into self-deleting herself. So F Twitter, they're bullies, and we don't like bullies here in the United States. We don't like people who pick on people who are weak, especially when she's coming to the aid of her friend for something that was not even wrong. It's just humor. See, at this point, you're not even allowed to even discuss LGBT matters. You can't even make jokes about them. You can't say anything, good or bad. Damn near. You have to tote their line. And so that makes the rest of us uncomfortable. We can't say, you can't, because if you listen to the closer, there was no jokes about trans people. It was just a story. Basically, I didn't get any jokes. I just got a story about a human being who befriended another human being who defended him. And then that friend in her defense was driven to a point over the top and she self-deleted. That was not a joke. There was some humor in there, some dark humor, but it wasn't jokes. These aren't, oh, your mama's so fat, you so short. These are not jokes. This is a storytelling. The likes of which Mark Twain would have been proud of. That's what we're dealing with here. So that was the first trap. The second thing is, in a one-liner, he said Twitter's not a real place. So F Twitter, because Twitter's not a real place. What did it do? He attacked the credibility of his adversary. You're not even real. Right? Even though we do know Twitter is real. It's the collective opinion of the public. But what he did was he undermined their credibility by saying you're not even real. So what does that do? It invalidates them in the eyes of the rest of the public. So what do I think is going to happen next? I think, well, you see what's happening next. They'll begin to attack. They'll use their proxies to attack DC, meaning the politicians. They'll attempt to shame other artists and entertainers into denouncing Dave Chappelle, and they'll threaten to cancel them if they don't denounce him. So in other words, we can't cancel Dave Chappelle, but what we'll do is we'll cancel anybody who won't denounce him. We'll make him unpopular. That's the plan. So we'll basically make everybody around you your adversary. We'll make you a social pariah. How do I know? Well, law enforcement uses the same thing.
They use the lower level people to turn on the upper level people. But it doesn't work if you can't get any cooperation out of anybody. Okay. Here's another thing. They'll begin to try to demonize the fan base. And they'll say, you guys are stupid, you're pig-headed, you're closed-minded, all those stuff they say. But what's going to happen is that's going to eventually backfire. That's the same thing that happened with Kevin Samuels. They tried to call all the Kevin Samuels fans, fanboys and followers. That's always going to backfire because the same fans, your fans, are also going to be Kevin Samuels fans. So what will end up happening is you'll end up canceling. You'll just make enemies of more people than you planned on. You'll make enemies of the public. And in a situation like that, you can't exist. Here's another thing about Dave Chappelle, but that's one commonality that they have. They try to attack the fan base, and I think that's something that threw me up. It threw up a red flag for me. Here's another one. And before I go any further, big shout out to 919 Pro. Thank you so much for the super chat. I don't see anybody else has contributed to the Cash App. I'll double check, but if you guys will do that, I'd appreciate that also. Okay. Here's another one. Let me point this out. It's nearly impossible to cancel someone who's already canceled himself, right? Cancel culture is a threat. What does it do in essence? It threatens to take your livelihood, your education. You say something crazy on the college campus and then they kick you out of school. You say something crazy to somebody you don't like, oh, they cancel your job. You're canceled. Now you're outlawed in Hollywood or something like that. People, here's the thing. We're not talking about a rapper who works for some big company, who depends on people to buy his albums over and over again. And play his music over and over. You're talking about a guy who does one performance and makes $24 million, right? Or a couple of performances leading up, you recorded, he makes $24 million. He's got his check ahead of time. So how do you really affect his job? And then here's another thing. The more important thing is Dave Chappelle walked away from $50 million. So as far as the public is concerned, his integrity is impeccable. The man walked away from $50 million, not because it was too little. He wanted more money. No, because he could not do the jokes that he wanted them to do, which he deemed demeaning at a certain point. So he walked away. You got to respect that. The public respects that. And so it is hard to bring into question someone's integrity when they've shown that their integrity cannot be bought with $50 million. See, most of you guys would have sold out for $50,000. For $50 million, he said, no, I'm good. And walked away and disappeared for 10 years. So how do you take somebody's livelihood away who's willing to sacrifice their own for what they believe? The public is like, no, not Dave. There's some rappers and some actors you can get rid of, some football players, but not Dave. Here's another thing. He's not afraid. And in fact, he's demonstrated how brave he is. And here's another thing. He's honest and he speaks the truth. What do I mean by that? And people respect that, right? We trust Dave Chappelle. All right. And so they're not going to side with you on somebody who speaks the truth. And I'll deal with this a little bit further down the road. Dave Chappelle and Kevin Samuels are saying things that the vast majority of the people think already. You guys think the same things. You black men have been thinking the same thing that Kevin Samuels is brave enough to say about the black community as far as the dating game and black women. You guys think the same thing. They're overweight. You don't like the weave. You don't like the attitude. But for years, black men were silent. You don't like the idea that they have all these tattoos, all these children out of wedlock.
You don't like that. Shout out to TC23, the Steel Curtain, and a big shout out to Kenneth Williams. You guys don't like that. But what happens when you say something about it? If you're not pandering to them, then you get canceled by the lovely ladies. Kevin clearly didn't care. I mean, maybe he did, but it doesn't show. And he's been rewarded for that. Same thing with Dave Chappelle. People are waiting around to hear what he says next about the LGBT community and their hypocrisy. And he hit a big one this time. You fall back into being white when it's convenient. You're LGBT until you need to fall back to being white. And then you do that. And he's being honest. And again, he's not the first comedian or entertainer to say that. He's not the first anybody to say that, but he said it in such an eloquent and dignified way. You know, people are willing to listen. It's something that they can gravitate to and touch. Kevin Samuels, same thing. And, you know, I know Kevin curses. Dave curses too. Dave has probably said the N-word more than a captain of a slave ship. You know, westbound to North America. So that's there. But the bottom line is here when he says it, and it's backed up by fact. So Kevin, like Dave, is the first one that I've seen to deliver this message in this time in a way that is receptive. Now, here's the thing. You guys understand that in the Black community, we're not allowed to confront Black women about their behavior, their lack of accountability, or we get canceled. This includes your moms. Your moms, I'm not just talking about love relationship. You can't tell your mom anything. Why? I'm your mama, that's why. You can't tell your sisters. You can barely tell your daughters anything. Right? But here comes Kevin Samuels, who does it. And look what happens. He's rewarded for it. Rewarded handsomely. So, you know, that's the other thing that they share in common. And they're truthful, honest, right? Brave, these two men. And I want to say this, but I don't want you to take it wrong. They're both a little quirky. You see what I mean? We've seen Kevin turn up, and we see Dave Chappelle, a little unorthodox as far as a comedian. You don't know what he's going to say next. So it's hard to kind of find out, well, what do you do with it? They're not these overbearing brutes. They're not these aggressive, assertive loudmouths. They're not that guy. They're real cool, but they got their own thing going, right? And what I can say about Kevin Samuels is that he's well dressed. I mean, the man is dressed immaculately. He's polite. He's mannered. He's perceived. He's polished. Or should I say, he's not perceived as threatening or dangerous or even vulgar, even though he curses a little bit. Right? And see, a lot of people wanted to take that and they wanted to attack this man's sexuality. This man who's been married multiple times, has children. You know, you attack his sexuality. But see, that backfired. You attack Kevin Samuels' sexuality and it backfired because here's the thing. You lovely ladies out there and you simps, you attack Kevin Samuels and said, we can't listen to him because, oh, he's gay, even though he's not. But by doing that, it backfired because in woke culture, the one that we live in now, attacking someone because of their sexual preference is deemed what? Homophobic. So now you got one interest group attacking you for something you did to somebody else. Here he is speaking the truth. And because he's not this overbearing brute, this grunt, this loud, buffoonish man, you deem that somehow assigned it, to question his sexuality. Okay? And now what you've done is you've simply opened yourself up to be attacked yourself. So you're attacking from one side, and another side comes and hits you. So that didn't work out very well. Again, attacking someone's sexuality is off limits and makes them the victim. And so now, those who tried to cancel Kevin Samuels themselves got canceled. It was a brilliant jujitsu move. I attack you, or I control you with the limb or the hand that you try to attack me with. That's jujitsu. Basically, I use your instruments of violence or your instrument of attack against you. What do you do with somebody like that? That in itself was also brilliant. So these two men, and I don't want to give away their secrets, but as a person who uses these tactics, I can sit back and observe and say, wow, that was good game, as you young people would say. That was strategic. I can enjoy that. I can enjoy that master play. And I love the way the two gentlemen played it out. They let it play out itself because and they just sprinkled a little bit in there. You've heard Kevin Samuels say a couple times, he said that himself. How can you attack me for being gay? Isn't that homophobic? And then he said this, you only attack heterosexual men for being gay because it would be an insult. If you attack a homosexual man who was gay and call him gay, then that's considered homophobic. So you know that I'm not gay because you wouldn't be calling me gay if I was. Brilliant. He laid that argument out. So Kevin knows what he's doing. Shout out to Kevin Samuels, brilliant man. And I mean, I love to see black men fight back like that. You don't see them screaming and hollering and threatening people and threatening to fight people in the street and getting belligerent. No, they play it cool. And a lot of you black men, you should learn from that. I want you to learn from that. Learn how to conduct yourself in public like Kevin Samuels did in dealing with his adversaries, because you will have adversaries, right? Same thing with Dave Chappelle. You will have adversaries, so learn to conduct yourself. Now, here's another thing. Here's another thing why these two gentlemen are basically cancel proof, right? It's their support base. See, a lot of people think Kevin Samuels' base of support is you think his base of support are I'm sorry, I apologize, you guys. You think his base of support is women, but in actuality, his base of support is men. Okay. Women watch his show in droves. But look who contributes to Kevin Samuels. It's men. His fan base, his supporting fan base is men. Everybody else is just watching. The people who put money in Kevin's, same thing here. Women don't support my page. They may look. Only about 20% of the people that watch this are women. The vast majority of the people that support my page are men. I can look Urban Eagle, Inquisitive Prince, all these guys. I guarantee you all these guys are men. The guys that contribute to my Cash App, these are men. Women may watch, but it's men that support my page. Why? Well, it's obvious. But before I get to that, what you have to understand is most public figures, most entertainers and public figures, they cater to women. And what they do is they get the women to manipulate the men to support their careers. It's the woman who says, yeah, I want to go see this concert. It's the women who say, oh, yeah, I like this outfit. I like this car. So if you buy that car, you hope she will like you. You hope if you take her to this concert, she will be happy. this movie, you go with her. She's the one that drives your spending habits. Now, what happens when you cut out the middleman or middle woman, i.e. the woman, and you go straight to the men? You're going to be taken care of. That's why I tell you guys all the time, in a fight between the sexes, you always cater to men. The money is with the men. The power and the influence is with the men. Any of these guys who cater to women, whether it be on social media, YouTube, television, eventually they will fail. They will fold because women's support is fickle, even especially among men, but even among women. So what does that mean? Kevin's support is strong. As long as he continues to be the voice, first of all, he caters to the thoughts, and he voices his opinions based on the things that heterosexual, traditional, patriarchal men think. He's saying what they want to say. He speaks for them. And so they will continue to support him with their dollars. So you can't cancel someone who's supported financially by men. And that's what these folks don't realize. It's not him pleasing the women and then them getting their men to go support him. No, it's going straight to the guy. Here's another thing. Dave Chappelle, similarly, Dave Chappelle speaks for middle America. He speaks for Ohio, Michigan, Texas, Kansas, Illinois. He speaks for the Atlantic states. He speaks for the South. He speaks for those folks in California who are afraid to speak up and tell you how they really feel. So what do I mean? Middle America supports Dave. For many years, decades even, it's been Hollywood and the left coast and the right coast who's tried to impugn, or let me say it like this. They've tried to push their Hollywood values on the rest of America. And we quietly stepped aside and said, hey, don't believe that, blah, 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 you know. But at this point, you have someone who speaks for Ohio, who speaks for Kansas, who speaks for Wyoming, who speaks for the values that the rest of Americans have. So it's going to be impossible to cancel him because he's always going to get support from middle America. He says the things that people in America want to say, the same stuff we think about the LGBT community, the same stuff we think about politics. Dave says it. The same things we think about abortion. Dave says it. And so you can't cancel somebody who all he has to do is go on the tour and he's going to sell out. Detroit, he speaks for Detroit. He speaks for the average American who's looking around and saying, man, this has got to be some sort of agenda. Why in the hell are they pushing all this stuff? The other thing you got to understand is, and this kind of summarizes it, both Dave Chappelle and Kevin Samuels, their popularity stemmed from the grassroots. It's the people, right? It's what the people, these are the people's commonly held beliefs. And these two gentlemen were simply bold enough or crazy enough, depending on who you ask, to come voice them out loud. And now they're being rewarded for it. That's it. I want to give a big shout out to they both proved their detractors to be bigger hypocrite than the accuser. That's exactly right. Kevin did that when you start calling him these gay names, and then you prove yourself to be a hypocrite. They start calling Dave, you're attacking, the trans community, and they attacked his friend and caused her to delete herself. That's exactly right. It was a brilliant trap is a brilliant trap, and it's one that they just fell right in. It was masterful. And I just enjoyed watching it play out. And now looking at it in hindsight, it's just brilliant. Afro Shop, he says, an intelligent, productive, wealthy, and well-known black man whose success comes from people's is a threat to the staff. You're exactly right. And they hadn't figured out a way to cancel him yet. Right? Now, the question that we have to ask ourselves is, why them? Why them? I say that in my Dave Chappelle, but why them? Hit the #1 button, fellas. Let me know you're in here for this. Let me know you are here for this, right? That what y'all say? I'm here for it. Let me know you're here for it. But let me know where you're checking in from. Right? I'm here for it. So why them, right? What is it? What are their commonalities? What do these two black men have in common? They're both black, they're both middle-aged. They definitely don't fit the stereotypical image of black men. Not the one that we have now. Kevin jumped out of the 1920s to 30s with the way he dresses and how he conducts himself. So, you know, well-dressed black man. So then you got Dave Chappelle, who, like I said, is quirky. He's not over the top with it. You know, he's definitely brilliant. He ain't the most beautiful man in the world, right? Let me see. Both of them are clearly well-studied and well-practiced in their art, their words and their timing and their delivery. That's something that Dave Chappelle paused and then the punchline, right? Don't you notice that the punchline? And if you look at young Dave Chappelle, he was a lot different. He had the black jokes, the white jokes, comparing black folks to white folks and all that. But at some point, he changed his whole style up, right? Now, you know, Dave Chappelle, in my assessment, right, he has what I call a revisiting style of discussion. And it's similar to a technique, cross-examination I use. It's one that kind of lulls the person being crossed into a feeling that they're safe, right? He starts off down a certain track, and then all of a sudden he skips to something totally different. And then before you know it, he comes back to that thing that he was talking about. For instance, what I'll do is if I know I got something I want to get out of somebody, I'll take them right all the way up to the edge of what I'm saying. So, Mrs. Smith, please tell us, how did you get to Utah? I drove. Okay. And when did you drive? I drove on December 2020. Okay. And how long did it take you to get to Utah? It took me 4 hours from where I was. Okay. And what'd you do once you got there? I just hung out with family and friends. Okay. All right. Cool. And then when did you make your way back to Texas? I made my way back to Texas 10 days later. Okay, and that's still, but yeah, about December 10th. Okay, all right, good. And then what'd you do when you got there? I went back and went on and enjoyed my holiday season. All right. And then I'll say, okay, you know, some other stuff. Where'd you go to school? I went to school at the University of Omaha. Okay, great. And what'd you do there? Okay, you majored in biology. Great. All right. Well, you know, you said you went to Utah on December 1st and you came back on the 10th. But the records indicate that you didn't receive your driver's license until January 15th. So that's true. So you went up there without a driver. You drove up there without a driver's license. You see what I mean? So what it did is I call that a revisiting style. So I basically break it up. And that's the same thing that I see Dave Chappelle does. And then what it does is it makes the people have to reset, and it gives you that, oh, interesting. You see, and it makes you say, oh, now I understand why he was asking that. It's just a brilliant style. When I listen to Kevin Samuels, he also has a certain, and I told the man before, he should have been a lawyer. He's got a law degree somewhere waiting for him that he just needs to go pick up. But what Kevin Samuels does, he has an extended pauses. Listen to him when he talks. He'll do an extended pause, or as they call it, a pregnant pause between statements when he's talking to somebody. And he'll just say, and so you said that you are, how many children do you have? 10? That's a lot of children to think you can get a high value man. See that uncomfortable pause right there? It just went a little too long. Well, what happens is that silence invites someone to reveal something in response that will really let him know who she is. And then he'll hit them with a pre-made. Well, I mean, my kids shouldn't matter. I mean, 10 kids, what them kids, I don't need help with my kids. And they'll say, these women think that having a child is, they don't even take it seriously. They think there's that. So he already has a pre-made response for that. It's brilliant. He sets them up. It's just like he just lines them up on the golf course and puts those balls on the tee and boop, boop, boop. It's entertainment. It's brilliant. You see what I mean? But they have a very interesting style. Now, what do I think is going to happen in the future? Right? I think the woke communities, along with these lovely ladies, and big shout out to Sam C. Thank you so much, Sam C. I appreciate you, man. Y'all, if you appreciate what and grow for broke, words or violence, though, right? Sticks and stones. I want to try to predict where they're going to go with this. Okay, that's another thing. See, the woke communities right now. Big shout out to Mixed Master Miko. He said, in my opinion, Dave and Kevin are able to conduct themselves and speak candidly because they actively control the source of their earnings. They are not dependent on the employer who define the code of conduct and policies. That's also true. They're autonomous. But remember, Dave still would need to get booked, right? And just like they silenced some other YouTube people, they could silence Mr. Samuels too, right? But what I want to do is I want to kind of figure out what the predictions are going to be in the future. Where are they going with this? Well, I think the woke community is scrambling for a remedy. The whispers in the Twitter, now they are boycotting. They're trying to boycott Netflix, and the Netflix president, it says, I'm sorry, but I still don't apologize for the show. It's just comedy. I apologize for what I did, but we still gonna keep this show going. Why? Because they paid the man, they're making money on them, and they have to compete with these other online platforms. And they got something that these other folks don't have. They got Dave. Matter of fact, a couple of months back when they tried to put the Dave Chappelle show on HBO or something like that, Dave said, y'all need to cancel it, right? Because I hadn't been paid, right? So that's what happened with that. But they're scrambling for a remedy. They're now having to revert back to picketing in the streets. They're having to revert back to this. But see, they're making an enemy out of the wrong person. Dave Chappelle is probably the biggest advocate for the LGBT community, especially trans and anybody else. Nobody else has been able to humanize this trans group. I don't even think the LGBT group, what do they call them? The aggressive feminist women, they don't even like the trans men, the trans women. So, they're turning on each other. But what Dave has done is he's actually humanized one of the most difficult alphabets to humanize by saying, hey, this is a human. This is my friend. Everybody can relate to that. Everybody can relate to a friend coming to an aid of another friend and being genuine. Everybody, this is your family. The deceased woman's family is supporting Dave, and so it's a problem. So they got to kind of figure out a remedy for this, because if they don't get this under control, then they're going to lose ground. But see, you know, unfortunately, the cat's out of the bag. People are still trying to wait to see what happens. People are still trying to wait to see what happens. But for the most part, they've made up their decision, and they figured out that Dave has found an answer for this. Same thing with Kevin Samuels. Kevin Samuels has taught the rest of black men in America, and all men, that, hey, this is how you address the issues faced by women, and specifically black women. And that was a hard combination to crack. And he solved it. Now, here's what I'm thinking is going to happen. And as I said before, they're going to fail because nothing lasts forever. It's been about 20 years, and the LGBT community has been able to go along without being addressed, and nobody can say anything to them. But they're going to have to secede that previously won ground, or risk losing it all. They're going to just look unreasonable. If you're telling me this comedian who didn't actually make fun or poke fun at members of the LGBT community is not allowed to even speak on your issues without your prior approval, then what that means is you're being unreasonable, and now you risk the chance of losing all the ground that you gained. Here's another thing. Those who will come in and attack afterwards, or those who will come in and address issues, they're going to be attacked. And what the LGBT community is going to, after they realize canceling these two men, or canceling Dave Chappelle's not going to work, but black women realize that we just can't cancel Kevin Samuels, and what they're going to do is they're just going to carve out an exception for those two men. And they may be able to speak. Kevin Samuels may be able to talk about issues faced by the black community. Dave Chappelle may be able to talk about issues, you know, whether it involved LGBT or whatever, because that wasn't what his whole show was about. But people, they're going to have to just leave them alone because it's too much of a hard target to hit. I call that the LT exception. If you guys remember football, Giants, Lawrence Taylor. Anybody remember Lawrence Taylor? Shout out to LT. You guys remember Lawrence Taylor? Well, there's a story about Lawrence Taylor. Bill Parcells relayed, you know, the discussion. He said, LT, everybody's waiting. So be on the bus at 10 o'clock. It's 10:30. Nobody knows where LT is. Bus doesn't move. Eventually, LT comes in, sits down, doesn't say a word to anybody. And one of the rookies said, well, he was late. Why does he get to be late? Because that's LT. Sit down and be quiet. That's the LT exception. This is Lawrence Taylor. What do? The bus doesn't leave till that's the exception. Kevin Samuels has carved out an exception for himself to talk about black relationships, especially to advocate on behalf of black men in relationships. Hey, what do? Dave Chappelle has carved out an exception. You just got to leave him alone. You see what I mean? You just got to leave Dave Chappelle alone because he's free to talk about what he wants to talk about. When you try to cancel him, you can't for all those reasons I gave above. They're just going to have to deal with them because they're great at what they do. Now, here's the thing. The internet has given black people, especially black men, a broadcasting platform. And Kevin Samuels' voice is that of is a voice of black men. It's a voice of heterosexual black men, at least as far as from their perspective on relationships. Patriarchal heterosexual black men, right? And just like Dave Chappelle, the world is listening, and they're listening to him. See, you know, This is what we're dealing with. If you guys appreciate what I'm doing, make sure you contribute to the Super Chat, the Cash App, and the PayPal. I'm going to go ahead and open the chat room up and let this thing run. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I love to bring some folks in, so I'll put the link in the chat room. But in the meantime, you guys get back and just enjoy this, and we'll be right back. The only time black men are allowed to speak is when it benefits others. So, hey, this is your opportunity to speak. I want to hear from you. And if you want to make this voice louder and clearer, then what you need to do is contribute to the Cash App, the PayPal, and the Super Chat. I appreciate you. Hey, if you're enjoying the content here at Dennis Sperling Unfiltered, make sure you support it by sharing, and subscribing to the channel. And also, hit that little notification bell in the corner so that you'll get notice of each and every one of our live feeds. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions. I appreciate it. Let's keep it going. Donate to the Super Chat. Donate to the PayPal. Donate to the Cash App. It's your contributions and your donations that'll cause for this platform to grow. Let our voice be the voice, the preeminent voice in Black America. What's up, you guys? We're back again. Make sure you hit the number 1 button if you appreciate what we're doing here. Jay Bones, talk about why cancel culture failed against Kevin Samuels and Dave Chappell. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, good morning, Dennis.
Right.
Sir.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the strategy to use cancel culture failed because it doesn't matter what time, Uncle D. Like, it doesn't really matter when, whether it's the decade or the century, but there's always been game changers and truth tellers. You understand what I'm saying? There will always be people that will come around and they will basically slash, they'll take the big sword and they'll cut real deep into the lies that society pumps out. And that's what these two men are. They're game changers. Nothing more, nothing less.
Cool. Short and to the point. GB4, what are your thoughts on this? Why is it that cancel culture has been unable to cancel Kevin Samuels? And tell me, do you disagree with my analysis? Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. What are your thoughts? Because I try to lay it out in a logical manner and explain why they're game changers. Like, in other words, the elements behind being a game changer. What are your thoughts on this thing, GB4?
I think that political correctness generally changes over time. Our society, it's constant tug of war. Typically we stay kind of in the center, and when things get a little too conservative, people come and step up to bring things to the center. When things get too liberal, things will, revert back to a more conservative state. So I think that we saw, thinking about like Obama and sort of the optimism of sort of like the change and the sort of openness of our society, that we can have a Black president and you can be whatever color hair and use whatever bathroom you want. I think that there are people who were sort of open to this idea, but I think that sort of the fact that power is centered on the coasts and the media is sort of ruled by this very, very small minority with very, very radically liberal ideas, I think that those chickens are kind of coming to roost. So the majority of average Americans are realizing that like these sort of social rules and this messaging doesn't resonate with me. And I think that a lot of people are realizing, especially as demographics age, that maybe we are more conservative. Maybe we do sort of see what a Dave Chappelle is saying. Maybe we do feel more strongly about biological gender. And, in certain areas of the country, it's an argument to say that you believe in biological gender. And, I'm not stating my opinion out of the way because I don't want them to cancel me. I got a YouTube channel. But I think that we're so afraid of, having our reputations destroyed on the internet that it's had a chilling effect on free speech. And I think that Dave Chappelle, and I'm not even get into the sort of racial dynamic about this, Black men, Black masculinity, people sharing their opinions in a strong way, it's like kryptonite for white liberals in many ways.
See, that's another thing. Would this have worked well if Dave and Kevin were white men? Because they would just, oh, you're just another patriarchal, oppressive white man saying this. I mean, were these the perfect candidate? Because there's only on the victimology poll, totem poll, the lowest of the lowest is going to be a trans, and I did the research on this, a Black trans woman. Those are going to, in other words, not only are you and see, that's interesting. Look who they have leading this charge, right? A woman who is Black, but also pregnant. So she's even lower than a Black trans woman. But see, Dave is right down there because he's a Black man, you know, on the victim, you know, as far as the victim limits are concerned, he's at least got a silver medal. So it's like, who's there to criticize him? Go ahead.
Let me wrap up with this, because I could talk about this for hours. I think I'm going to make an analogy to Trump here, right? There exists this silent majority, and I think Kevin Samuels and Dave Chappell, you made a very, very good point about Dave Chappell representing middle America. I think that there's a silent majority of people that don't have the clout or the reputation of a Dave Chappelle or Kevin Samuels, who are virtually uncancelable because they don't need, you know, their platform and the fact that they're saying things that resonate with people is enough for them to feed their families. They don't need YouTube. They don't need Netflix. If YouTube and Netflix disappeared, Kevin Samuels would still be doing this thing, you know? So I think that the silent majority is slowly becoming a little bit less silent in their support of these two figures in saying, hey, we prefer free speech. We prefer being honest about how we feel. And we prefer to not coddle anybody or treat any particular social group better than others. Because as you said, you know, Black men, you know, we've been in a lot of ways at the bottom of the totem pole economically. And we're seeing this sort of shift where, like, you know, Black men are having a moment, you know, we're having a moment where we do have people who are actually speaking out for us in a public space and can say, hey, like, there's some hypocrisy here. Hey, you know, like, these sort of white liberals championing Black trans women, maybe that's the Trojan horse for silencing some of these other views that, you know, Black men who silent majority may have. So that's all on my part. Sorry if it was all over the place.
No, it's cool, man. It's a very complicated subject. Vintage Negro, always good to have you back in here. So what do you see is, I mean, I kind of laid out some things about Mr. Samuels.
I think I'm having a problem with my internet now, something, because it keeps freezing or something.
Okay. You got feedback too. Well, you go ahead and work that out, Vintage Negro. Jay Bones. So what's next? What's going to happen next? They can't just let this ride, can they? They can't just allow this to happen. Next thing you know, it'll catch on and everybody will be speaking their mind about what they think about these issues that have been off the table for the past 20 years.
Oh, well, without a doubt, Uncle D, you know, if you look at the current climate right now, they've already got their Hollywood minions, you know, who are willing to take shots at Dave Chappelle, already commenting and, you know, saying very heinous things about him. But the truth is the truth, Uncle D. You can't get past it. The truth is the truth. And the people that know, you know, what he said, it struck such a huge core. You know,
do you understand what I'm saying? I want to get to it. Do you understand what I mean when I say this man is the greatest advocate of the trans community? Because before, he humanized his friend, he personalized his friend who deleted herself as a result of being bullied by the LGBT community. And it comes after she
he defended her.
Yeah.
He defended her because the same people that's attacking.
And shout out to Solo.
I'm sorry, Uncle D, go ahead.
Brian L. Ponder, thank you so much. He said Dave and Kevin have in their own way replaced Dick Gregory. They're bigger than their platform, so the platforms can't cancel them. As you wrote, Dave canceled himself, so it's impossible to cancel. That's very true. And then Jay Bones, you said this: can't cancel the game changer. It's impossible, Uncle D. Okay, cool. Now, what were you gonna say, Jay?
Yeah, I was saying that if you know, like the brother said, you know, Malcolm used to say back in the day, the chickens came home to roost. You know, it's funny because they, you know, this so-called LG blah 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 community, they bullied her, and they're the same people that's, you know, he defended her, and the same people that's going at his neck are the same people that caused her demise. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's always been a time like this, Uncle D. It doesn't matter. Even during the Crusades, even during the Spanish Crusades, there were people who were willing to stand up and say, you know something, this doesn't make any sense at all. So there's always been game changers around. You know, he's no different. You know, Dave really stood up. And
but you see that I kind of talked about how him telling that story laid a trap for the LGBT community. Here you are, you've already basically caused my friend to self-delete herself. And she said I was okay. She validated me, and she thought my jokes were funny. Matter of fact, her family came along and thought my jokes were funny. And in fact, she was such a good friend of mine, I started a trust fund for her daughter. And, you know, I can't wait when she grows up, and I'm gonna tell her that her mother was a hell of a man. You know, and that's not this, you know, but he humanized this person. He told us so much in a story without telling us about this person. But more importantly, it was his friend. So it makes us want to be her friend. You know, it makes us, hey, I'm having a human moment, you know, and for them to come along and basically kill the LGBT community and their Twitter fingers, to come along and kill that baby bird, it enrages the population at large. You see what I mean?
Absolutely, Uncle D. Absolutely.
And so it makes us want to protect her, and it makes us want vengeance against those bullies on Twitter, and it also casts them in a very evil light. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're going to end up eating themselves up. You know, they're just going to be on an island, because the majority of their community don't even get along with each other. So it's not, you know, Dave didn't do anything special there. He just basically exposed, you know, he laid a trap for them, and they walked right into it.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting how this thing is being played out. But anyway, what else? We don't have anybody else in here. Sage Apprentice, thank you so very much. He says hard work trying to cancel the truth. It lives on long after the messenger is gone and haunts deniers. So that's a good one there. But you know, I'm not going to believe you to the point. We'll have to see how this plays out. You guys have my theory on what's going to happen. But let's first make sure that we as Black men stand behind Dave Chappelle and Kevin Samuels for their outspokenness and their courage and their bravery. Whether you support their message wholeheartedly or not, these are still Black men, and they are speaking in an eloquent and beautiful way. And here's the other thing. I want to make sure I drive this point home. I think Dave Chappelle and Kevin Samuels would agree, as far as their individual messages, they are not the first to put this message out. They are not the first to propose this point of view. But what they have done is shown that they can do it better than everybody else, to the point that it's now become mainstream and acceptable to discuss issues related to the LGBT community as far as Dave Chappelle is concerned. And as far as Kevin Samuels, it's okay to criticize Black women who are before this point above reproach. It's okay to do it. And so you got to give them their props for that, because before that, the preachers wouldn't do it, the actors wouldn't do it, Hollywood wouldn't do it. Everybody else bowed down, and they allowed this dysfunction to continue, but not Kevin Samuels. So shout out to him, and shout out to Dave Chappelle. And I appreciate that it was two Black men that took these burdens on their back and carried society forward. And so I salute these brothers, and I appreciate what they're doing. So kudos to you, gentlemen. Other than that, this is Uncle D. I appreciate everybody in here. And as I always say at this time, I'm out.